Public Q&A presents Ask Reddit question. Redditors who massively fucked up at work, what happened? A very important and very big customer placed an order for some chemical bulk to be delivered early January. Our contract with them stated that every day we were late we would be fined millions. The bulk plant finished on time and just needed the drums to pour the bulk into. Warehouse come up to my office. I was the purchaser responsible for buying the drums. Where are the 250-liter drums? Bulk plant need them. It's fine, I thought. I placed the order before Christmas. I remember doing it. Looks at SAP. Why is the supplier late? They're never late. Checks my order. Mouth goes instantly dry and I start to sweat. I had placed the order, but I forgot that for this particular supplier I needed to email them the PO. We had just changed the system to allow SAP to auto-email the supplier after we placed an order, but not for this one supplier. I knew this, but must have forgotten. These drums had a 2-week lead time from the supplier, so I knew I was dead. Not only would we have had millions of pounds of fines, but the production plant would have been put on hold, having to store tons of bulk with nowhere to put it. I went and told my boss, and just told him I had funked up. Being an awesome guy and boss, he thanked me for being honest, and told me it's going to be okay. He called the supplier, sweet-talked them, and because we were a good customer they allowed us to take another customer's order. The drums were delivered next day. That was about 9 years ago, and I still think about it. The lesson here, especially for younger people, or those who recently entered the workforce, is own up to your mistakes right away. Panicking, freaking out, and trying to hide the problem from your manager's hoping time will make things better almost always makes things worse. You will make mistakes in your work. Be calm, own up right away, and it will be okay. Follow up. This reply has gotten popular, so adding another related thought. When something's gone wrong and you need to tell someone about it, it's always best to do this in person, face to face, if at all possible. A lot can be misconstrued and lost in translation via email, Slack, even the phone. It's embarrassing and scary in the moment, but it will save you and your manager a lot of frustration and prove to them that you really care and are willing to face and confront tough situations. This is a good quality in any employee. Considering we're in a pandemic, this is tricky. I recently made a pretty big mistake with a client leading to a significant amount of data loss. All good now though. At the time, I had no idea how to solve this problem or really even why it happened, but I knew I needed to tell them right away. I slacked the manager and said, "Can you hop on a Zoom really quickly, it's time sensitive." 2 minutes later we're talking face to face about the issue and everyone's looped in. An employee who has made an awful mistake and was absolutely mortified over it will never do it again. A new guy might. Good managers know this. Switch to SAP, they said. SAP will be easy, they said. Been in a similar situation, I feel you. I have never related to anything more in my life. It will be much cheaper in the long run for the company and require less staff. 16+ million later, and multiple SAP wizards, and no one knows how to use it. Stop all production. Accidentally left out the move next method on a loop that sent out an email broadcast, which meant it mail-bombed the first recipient in the loop until we realized what was happening and killed the process. The CEO's email was the first email address in the loop. He was an arsehole anyway, and was absolutely incoherent with rage when his Outlook crashed when downloading 15,000 emails inviting him to take a satisfaction survey. Good thing it was only a test. One of the managers where I work had the junior IT guy add a vacation autoresponder to his email, and the confirmation window had a checkbox applied to inbox. The manager never cleans his inbox, and the IT guy decided to check that box. Something like 10,000 emails were sent that day. Important clients who he would have been conversing more often with were getting multiple hundreds of vacation notifications. Nothing bad came from it, and most of the clients were good-hearted about it. He was getting replies like, "Frank, please stop. We know you're on vacation." Most autoresponders I have worked with limit it to 1 reply per sender per day, in response to emails coming in. It seems like an oversight to not have that limit. I was a bartender. I knocked down the entire top shelf. Thousands of dollars in liquor. ETA, I didn't get in trouble, the boss just built a stronger shelf. He found it hilarious that the only thing I saved was a $6 bottle of sloe gin that happened to be on the wrong shelf. If it all came down, I guess you could blame it on someone else, probably whoever chose the fixtures and fittings. Unless you were the one that chose them, then you've only got your shelf to blame. All for the joke, huh? Chemistry teacher here. On my first day of teaching, I set my classroom on fire after some unfortunate incidents involving sodium, water, and a glass tank. The problem was that the glass tank was too big, so the hydrogen gas got to build up to a decent amount. Then suddenly, kaboom! The glass tank exploded, there was shattered glass everywhere and hit the students, who were all wearing safety glasses. A column of water grew from the glass tank to the ceiling, and the ceiling started to burn. After a few moments the fire died out, and the fire alarm was loud, and I had to make sure all of the students were okay. Which they were. It ended up being one of my funniest classes to teach for many years. The students absolutely loved it. I was a bit of a nervous wreck for a few hours. The worst thing in hindsight is all of the comments saying things like "you started your career with a bang" and stuff like that. I love telling this story. Back in the floppy disk, pre-internet days of computers, I was tasked by my job to do a software installation on board a Coast Guard icebreaker. I flew from Ottawa to Halifax. Then I caught a taxi to CFB Shearwater, from where a twin otter flew me 1,000 kilometers north to a little town on the border of Quebec and Labrador. From there I was flown by helicopter to do an at-sea landing on the icebreaker. After landing I went down to the engine control room, where the computer was located, and laid out the disks. Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3, Disk 4, Disk 6. Disk 5 was still on my desk in Ottawa. What happened next? I had to use the ship-to-shore phone, and a modem to download the missing disk image from the office. It was slow and kept getting interrupted because there was only the one phone on the ship, and the crew kept wanting to call their families. I was not very popular for a while. Sounds like the first episode of a future sitcom. Slammed a forklift into a Camaro. Oh damn, that is not good for the resale value of the forklift. Are you kidding? Now he gets to paint a horse on the side like it's a WW2 fighter plane tallying its kills. It was a Camaro, not a Mustang. All he gets to paint is a little bow tie. I dropped a screw inside the engine edit motor of a TGV train. Oh God. We spent half an hour trying to catch it by moving a magnetic stick inside the crankshaft, with oil spilling everywhere. The engine was new and about to be mounted on a train that was supposed to run later in the day. I was so terrified I would possibly cause quite a lot of trouble since no other train or engine was available. Shout out to my manager who finally got that screw, and definitely deserved his half a dozen of croissants the next morning. It's great how in France, croissants are used as payment. They are used as compensation payment for dumb stuff you do that causes more work for your coworkers. Also for other occasions. Getting married. Croissants. Sick leave. Croissants. Birthday. Croissants. Damn, in New Zealand it's a box of beer. Yep, in Australia that would have been a box straight up. Side story. In motorsport the tradition is to buy the pit crew a carton of beer whenever a race car is damaged, and they have to stay back to fix it. At the Adelaide Grand Prix many years ago, Mark Skaife rolled his brand new Nissan GTR Skyline, destroying it, and when his teammate Jim Richards drove past and saw the damage, quipped on the radio, "I think Scafe just bought the boys a small bottle shop." Jim Richards was famously a smart ass. Like that time he called the crowd at Bathurst a pack of arseholes from the podium. He's like the Antichrist version of Lewis Hamilton. Tends to be homemade cake or fresh pretzels only in the south in Germany. Croissants are better. Miss going to France. Nobody pays me in croissants. Equals. Thanks for making sure it got fixed. No, really. We rely on people to own up to their mistakes and fix them. Thank you. Well, in my case, it could have been criminal to let a screw in the engine of a train eventually going 300 kilometers per hour. From what I experienced during my internship as train mechanic, you have to be very aware of everything you do, every tool you use, because everyone is trying to prove they are not at fault when an incident occurs. E.g., we were all gathered at some point when a train derailed in Paris because it had been repaired at our maintenance site. Manager asked everyone if they had done any operation on some parts that were found to be defective. Same with aircraft maintenance. Had a few instances of a new guy losing a screw in the cockpit, and we'd have to tear it apart to find it. There is one spot that is perfect for a screw to fall into, and if it does, the seat won't eject in an emergency. I often travel on high-speed trains. It's a huge responsibility to maintain them. I am pretty happy that the worst you can usually cause in software is some lost revenue, and a more annoying than fatal crash. Edit for the annoyed IT mob. I am talking about our particular software, the one I could personally mess up. Think zero functional safety requirements. I was a nanny. A little 2-year-old I was watching fell down and hit the back of her head on the concrete. I rushed over to her, but she didn't move or blink, just laid on her back motionless. I tried to check for breathing and pulse and pretty much blanked on everything I would ever learned in CPR or first aid training in my panic. She seriously looked dead. I screamed for help. The neighbors came running. I told them to call an ambulance. The police, fire department, ambulance showed up within minutes. She was rushed to the hospital, and a million tests were run. Turns out she barely even had a bruise, no concussion, no seizure, no injury, nothing. The doctor said she probably just got scared and froze, for just long enough for me to lose my shit. Her parents were charged $5,000 to tell them their child got surprised. Edit. Thank you to everyone for your kind and reassuring comments. And to those who let me know that fainting from involuntarily breath-holding or stun responses is not uncommon. Honestly was expecting to get brigade with, "What a dumb cunt" comments. Regardless, you did the right thing. Not a fuck-up. P. You did the right thing. My son rolled out of bed. Why the fuck was an infant napping way up on a bed unsupervised? And his nanny didn't even realize it because she had her headphones on in another room. He had a welt the length of my index finger across the back of his head. Instead of informing us of the fall, she put a little cap on him to hide the injury. Needless to say, we fired her and took him to the ER. Thank God no concussion. I do joke that his eccentric nature stems from that fall. If she had just taken the proper action, called us and taken him to the urgent care, she would have kept her job. You did the right thing. Dude, as parent, I would rather pay the $5,000 to make sure my kid was all right. You did the right thing. Working the stock room at Malwart, grabbed a Pepsi pallet with the forklift and didn't realize it was a short pallet. The forks came out the other side and through to the pallet of glass Coke bottles it was up against. When I lifted the Pepsi, the Coke came up with it and dumped the entire unwrapped pallet of glass bottles, spilling all that sticky soda on the floor. That mess was hell to clean up. However, the vendor had to eat the cost, because that store's posted policy is that they cannot leave unwrapped pallets unless it is being worked. Oh fuck, that reminds me of what happened in my workplace a few years back. My coworker was trying to take down a pallet, but he had the forklift to close to the racking. He accidentally pushed the support beam above the pallet he was going for so far up that the pins busted and both pallets' 2L Coke bottles on that top rack tipped. Luckily, nobody got hurt, the pallets were wrapped, and neither one fell completely. But they were hanging so far over the edge that most of the contents ending up falling anyway. That entire end of the warehouse was flooded with Coca-Cola. There were so many bottles on the floor that we couldn't drive equipment through, and we were wading through the sea of Coke, squeegeeing it out the loading dock door. For months later, we could still feel the stickiness. Aha! I used to work at a Sonic drive-in, and some dinglefuck dropped a 5-gal bag of dried pepper syrup. Thing popped when it hit the floor and managed to cover over half the store's floor in syrup. Boss was pissed, those bags were like $55 a pop. Aren't they supposed to be bag-in-box? They stay in the cardboard specifically because the bag is fragile. They are. That's why this individual was a dinglefuck. They removed the bag from its shell. LOL. Dinglefuck. Dinglefuck. Looking for the. Used to work for Coke but forgot to rewrap a pallet and some malwart forklift driver spilled them all over the floor. Not me personally, but a guy I worked with at a feed mill accidentally added the incorrect mineral bags to the sheep feed mix that contained copper. Wiped out an entire flock of over 100 sheep. Oh, that's an actually horrible one. Property damage happens, but man, the poor sheep. I worked in a pizza place and they caught me eating olives on camera. It wasn't 2 to 3 olives, I could eat like 1,000 in a shift. I really don't know why, and it's a time in my life I want to forget. I got some giant olives in my fridge, going to go eat some now. I found the seriousness of you talking about olives and wanting to forget that time as unintentionally hilarious. I work at a quick lube style shop, so I work around fairly new vehicles. I wish I could say it's all cheap shit, but no. Dude comes in one day for one of our services, so I am doing everything under the hood of a BMW 7 Series. We fill the oil, ran the pressure check, closed the hood because the newer BMWs have a digital oil readout on the screen in the dash. Dude leaves, comes back 5 hours later, hood is fucking smoking. Aw fuck. We open the hood, and there's about 3 quarts of oil in the engine compartment. I didn't put the oil cap back on properly like I thought I did. Man, I was pissed. Got an oil change some years back at a franchise and my car suddenly died 5 minutes after I left, naturally right on the expressway. Turned out the mechanic just straight up forgot to put new oil in. Destroyed my engine. They replaced it no charge, rented me a car for a week, but I promptly switched to a different company entirely. My first day working at a coffee shop, I left my Sharpie in the oven. Finally found it while trying to warm a sandwich, and had to shut the whole thing down to be cleaned. It smelled like a chemical weapon. Edit. I went to sleep and woke up to my highest rated comment. There go my 15 minutes, I guess, LOL. When moving house as a student one year, a stick of cherry lip balm fell into our toaster. What's that nice cherry smell? Oh, actually that's a little overpowering now, where is that coming from? Oh dear God, what the fuck? The toaster. Turn the fucking toaster off. I got to ask. How? Ever written with a cold Sharpie? Shit's miserable, man. Like trying to write with a crayon that won't crayon. A crayoff. I was new to SQL and accidentally mailed a list of people with deceased date is not null instead of is null. So an entire marketing campaign was sent to dead people. That eventually led to our marketing tools being hard-coded not to mail dead people, which makes sense, but I was terrified when I found out. Nothing good has ever come out of statements starting with "I was new to SQL." Edit. Thanks for the award. All of us SQL screwer-uppers are in this together. Rollback. No transaction is active. During the first week of my first job in animation, after I graduated, I had to move a bunch of scene files from one server to another. The files were heavy, so I was told to just cut and paste them to make it faster. I accidentally put them in a wrong area, and without thinking just deleted them, went back to move the files again. They weren't there, I had forgotten I hadn't copied them. I lost 5 minutes of full animation. My longtime friend who recommended me for the job got in shit because his backups didn't catch the files, and my direct supervisor worked for 21 days straight to help redo all the animation. The studio and everyone involved were way nicer to me about it than I expected. I kept my job, and I brought in donuts for the whole crew for a week after. But it was an awful start. There wasn't a backup. I don't think the entire blame can fall on you if someone told you to cut-paste important files that didn't have a backup. Probably why they kept their job. Tech companies have all moved towards a model where mistakes trigger a post-mortem process that tries to find the root cause and makes sure the same mistake can't happen again. This only works if everybody is honest in analyzing the problem. Passing blame or covering up one's own fault is really counterproductive. So, in order to make this actually possible, there is a policy that there won't be any disciplinary consequences for honest mistakes. Given how expensive it is to replace a skilled technical employee, that is almost always the cheaper decision anyway. I have no idea whether the movie industry has switched to the same model. But the success in the tech industry certainly hasn't gone unnoticed. Well thought out. I know if a mistake happens in our IT department, my boss has our back. A team built on trust is valuable to getting stuff done. Reminds me of that Toy Story 2 animation team, where they accidentally used a delete command on their backup servers, leading to deleting 90% of their animation. But one of their animators backed up the files in her PC at home. I once was the only videographer shooting a once-a-year event for my school with a DSLR. Towards the end of the night, when the SD card was getting full, I went to check just how full and accidentally formatted it. Real stupid move. That gave me so much anxiety, and I felt like such a dipshit. I can only imagine what being in your situation must felt like. Glad it worked out well for you. It worked out fine for me too. Filmmaking in general is really easy to fuck up. I find people are fortunately generally forgiving to the new guy. I remember that feeling, your stomach just drops. I cried a little at the time, I felt so horrible. I am glad it worked out for you as well. It can always be worse, can't it? Thank God in your case it wasn't a wedding. That sounds a lot like a lack of procedures and safeties if someone is able to destroy weeks' worth of work, especially someone new to the job. Production artists easily could have write-only privileges to an asset folder that a pipeline specialist manages. Or at the very least, have a script take care of moving files so that they can be verified to be redundant before erasing from the origin location. After the Pixar incident web address, you'd figure that other production houses would wisen up and put in safeguards. You're 100% right, however it's also very common. I see it firsthand all the time. A lot of people either don't have the knowledge or the initiative to make sure this can't happen. Many people also falsely believe that focus and try really hard not to make mistakes is a strategy. A proper system allows people to recover from mistakes. Years ago I worked in an office and had a very cool boss who was the general manager. He and I were quite close and used to joke around all the time. I had been corresponding with a fairly important customer overseas about an issue they were having, and I needed information from her to move forward. I asked for info a few times, but she kept coming back with different details than what we needed. I sent an email to my boss saying something like, "I can't believe I asked the same simple question 3 times, and this is what I get in reply." Except I didn't send that email to my boss. I sent it to the customer. I was in a panic when I realized what I had done. Went to my boss to let him know what happened, and he thought it was hilarious, but that I should write a brief apology to her for an outburst. Was dreading the reply the next morning, but to my astonishment our customer actually apologized to me for not paying attention. Felt like I got away with murder. LOL. I used to work for a company that designed online banking software in early 2000s and sold it to banks. We had one customer, a bank president, complaining that our product didn't work on AOL. Like the shitty browser associated with the shitty dial-up internet. You've got mail. Dude starts ranting that there are still millions of customers who use the product. I thought I muted him, and said, well, millions of people eat McDonald's every day, that don't make it a good fucking idea. Only, I forgot to mute. Everyone stared at me in terror. After the longest pause in the world, he shouts, "Excuse me." Then he started asking which browsers we supported. Then he said he was going to call our VP. Then he did. And proceeded to tell the VP I was the only honest one at the entire firm. So I got stuck managing his account. Wasn't expecting that. Not shitty hire are used to being surrounded by yes men, so sometimes they appreciate when someone has the honesty, stupidity, or bravery to speak their mind. Oh man. Have experienced this. Got thrown into a meeting with a bunch of directors because 2 people above me were on vacation and another went on short notice maternity leave with an adoption. I go into the meeting and basically say, here's the issues we're seeing right now, and it was like nobody knew any of these issues were going on. And because it's the first time they've heard it, now they want weekly meetings with me to review the schedule, and if these issues are being resolved. And everyone is coming to me now asking questions. And I am somehow tagged a go-getter just by going, hey, this is fucked up. It was just amazing how problems that everyone at my level and lower in the company were dealing with on a day-to-day basis that were grinding productivity to a halt just didn't get communicated past a certain level of leadership. Which means all the stress to solve it came back to us. Which made the problems worse. So when all these leaders are throwing everything at a wall trying to figure out why their best laid plans aren't working over the course of months, coming into a meeting going, well, here's the obvious reason why. You could see the light bulbs going off in their heads. I am consistently amazed at employees who observe big issues that directly affect their productivity yet refuse to speak on it. My manager right now is very open and encouraging to employees about process improvements, but I guess most office workers are dead inside and simply don't care. The biggest issue I have seen is when someone brings up a problem, they are usually the ones tasked to fix it with really no additional support, so keeping quiet while trying to fix it means you don't have that upper management expectation of fixing it on top of the initial problem. That or bringing up, hey, we are overworked will come with a response, okay, detail out what tasks you do, create a presentation on what you are unable to do, and present to us as well as present potential solutions. In other words, complain about workload will only give you the additional task of trying to fix the workload problem, which just adds to your workload. There is a certain point where stuff should be brought up. But a lot of minor inconveniences are much easier to deal with if you don't involve management. Best bank president ever. Any managerial role that is willing to take advice rather than surround themselves with yes men are a godsend. Actually, the more I think about it, it was a really fucking good call by him. Like what? I accidentally yelled at the CEO in a lab I worked in, and told him he has no idea what he's talking about. I was pretty new, and just so happened to have some issue with recognizing faces. It just takes me longer than most people. So I probably saw him a few times, but I couldn't really tell him apart from multiple other older white men with white hair and glasses that worked in multiple positions. I don't remember what the exact situation was. I think we had a big project that required a new, experimental machine, except when they approved the machine it was tested with water, and the material we were working with was way more viscose. The CEO went down to the lab to see why we were so much behind schedule, and continued insisting there shouldn't be any problem. The machine was tested multiple times, we're doing something wrong. I was assuming this was the machine engineer. They all looked the same to me at that point. I interrupted him, flat out telling him he clearly has no idea what he was talking about. Sudden silence. I realize I probably did something wrong, but it was too late. The man looks shocked. I got the machine running, and demonstrated the issue. It was clearly a problem with the machine. The man was finally convinced. Said he'll talk to the engineer. I realize it wasn't, in fact, the engineer. Apparently, this incident made him decide he liked me. Not only I didn't get in trouble, but he seemed a lot friendlier and informal towards me after it. I am still pretty puzzled about it. Probably because you didn't talk to him like you were his subordinate, which is what he is used to hearing. So afterwards, he may have looked at you as an unofficial equal in a way perhaps. I am glad it worked out for you. After years of being a subordinate, the mentality of do what the boss says gets ingrained. You also start to think boss knows best when you fuck up. Only when I began managing people did I realize that the boss knows barely enough to get the job done, and only slightly more than the subordinate. Bosses or upper management are quite often scared, clueless, uncertain, unsure and ignorant simply because they are human. They definitely don't have all the answers. If you as a subordinate can demonstrate superior knowledge even one time, and solve a problem efficiently, upper management will forever look at you as the guy with the answers. Your directiveness saved him time and money. The hard part in any sort of CUST-serve position is identifying who wants the truth, and who just wants to scream. This is why I can't ever work on that kind of role again. I don't have patience for supposed adults who feel the need to abuse others. I also refuse to have that happen to anyone in my back office department, so they know to start copying me on email chains that are heading that way. Same. I used to work for a call center who did work for a large telecommunications provider. I won't mention the provider's name, but their initials are AT&T. When I found out that they were not willing to back an employee when a customer is being abusive, I quit, and never looked back. The reason these adults can act like children is that companies are afraid to protect their own employees against the abuse, and take it just for the almighty dollar. It just goes back to something an old boss told me when I worked for a small ISP: some customers aren't worth $20 a month. At that ISP, we didn't have to take any customer's shit, and the customers treated us with respect. Almost same. Was a GM of a restaurant about 15 years ago, and we were having POS menu issues. I kept asking for a specific fix, and they kept issuing other fixes. I finally sent an email to my boss, another GM, who was having same issues, and the menu management person fixing the issue, basically asking if they needed me to do it, or if should reach out to their supervisor to do it. Then I fired up another email saying, I asked the question, maybe now they'll listen to me. I await a tersely worded response. But I sent it to everyone. I got a single sentence in reply. I'll implement your fix tomorrow. Is that tersely sick enough for you? I also got a 5-minute lecture on email etiquette from HR. Not my proudest moment, but the problem got fixed. The chef was angry that day. I was advised by my coworkers to do whatever it takes to get on his good side. I thought, I'll just try to avoid him. He was standing in the cooler taking inventory. Beside him were the 5-gallon containers of prepped food. I sneaked in and tried to quickly grab the ranch container, but in my haste, I nudged another. It was the French onion soup. All 5 gallons of it. On his pants and shoes. Yes, he was upset. The prep girl was upset. I had 10 minutes today. I learned lunch service started. I have no idea how I am still alive. I work in a kitchen, and while I have never fucked up this bad, your story definitely gave me anxiety. Controls engineer. Made a copy-paste error while programming, and a 2 was a 3. So one machine tagged at 3 was waiting for conditions of 2. So naturally the lift moved when it thought it should and crashed into another machine. Course I am having to stand there figuring out the issue while maintenance is up there replacing busted parts. But because I have made 1,000 changes, it didn't click fast enough, and well, it happened again. Program doing exactly what you told it to do. The bane of all software engineers. The antithesis of do as I say, not what I do. Do as I meant, not as I said. Realistically, once AI has cracked that, we're out of these jobs and reskilling in AI maintenance. It looks like you're trying to reprogram the guidance system. Would you like some help? Go away, Clippy. Some people say programming is applied math. I disagree, it's really just applied subreddit monkey spa. Worst I have done was crash an entire chemical plant by completely fucking a download and faulting the controller. Lots of screaming and much tension, but the product was still in spec. The oh shit, my software isn't responding. Did I just break something, or is this poorly optimized, proprietary bullshit software just having a seizure? Question sucks, every time. Faulting the processor is a gut-wrenching feeling I would like to not ever experience again, but know that I will if I do my job. Pretty much yep. It happens. No matter how much you test, mistakes happen. But with safe work practices, hopefully all the mistakes cost is money. That can always be replaced. Yeah, it's tough to remind myself that when the evil looks start getting shot my way. But I would never implement any change I didn't know for certain was safe even with failure. Exactly. And if someone really pushes you, never be afraid to ask for it in writing. It's amazing how fast people stop demanding you do things like bypass interlocks to just get it working when it's their name that will be attached to it. Took me a while to learn that one, but now most of my clients respect me enough to know that I am not wasting time while I am sitting there staring at a computer screen, and to at least listen to what I have to say when it comes to control strategies and whatnot. Above me at my office on the whiteboard the following is written. Create bug hot. Control+C, Control+V. Measured something on a construction site off by a foot. It wasn't discovered until it cost $150,000 to remedy the mistake. Nothing happened to me because it was a $10 million job. There was a big project here where a highway overpass for cars and trolleys was being replaced. The whole thing stopped and got pushed out a year because when they were fabricating the steel, someone at the plant caught a critical error in the plans. Apologies, this is long smiling face with open mouth and cold sweat. This was my first real job out of uni, so I was early 20s. I had been working at a pharma company for a few months, and a guy, Andy, set me up on a system that the whole company 100K and used to catalog documents and updates on drugs we sold. My only job was to go though and find old drugs that we didn't sell anymore and change their settings to that they were invisible to everyone, just to make everything a bit tidier. I had been doing this for 2 days when, somehow, I managed to set it so that the entire database was locked out to everyone in the company, and I was the only person with access. Within minutes I was getting calls from people all over the world. All very polite. Hi there, I am trying to add a record to drug A and I can't make changes. I can see you're the admin, can you give me access rights? I was frantically trying to add people on, one by one, while screening my calls and watching as emails started flooding my inbox. I was panicking so hard, and just as I realized this was not going to work, I was added to a meeting about the system. It was literally me, Andy, and 3 senior managers. I was freaking out. I decided to just ignore the call. Stupid, I know, but I was like 21 and terrified. About 3 minutes in, Andy arrives at my desk. Gray, we're in a call. Did you see my invite? I act dumb and tell him I am just dialing in, but he was very chipper, which made me suspicious. Anyway, I dial in, and the head of tech is monologuing about how he has been saying for months that the software is overloaded, and how any minute it's going to implode on itself, etc. And Andy is agreeing with them, that this is the very reason he asked me to remove the listings in the first place. I listen quietly, and it turns out that they are all convinced the software did this to itself, and the only people who still have access rights are the people who were logged in at the time it freaked out. As opposed to it being just me and the people I had manually added in. As time goes on, it becomes apparent that they all think I am some kind of specialist on the system. Andy keeps mentioning that I was working on a project for him, and they keep saying Gray can take care of this, but well, flag this for Gray. Fortunately for me, I knew what they meant each time. It was like I was listening to a foreign language, and then just when they spoke English they assigned that bit to me. 3 days later, they had fixed the system, and in that time, I had removed old users and finished removing the unused drugs, which they were still convinced was the reason it shut down to begin with. As a result, I got a bonus. I got a mention on the CEO email for assisting on the crisis. And at my end-of-year meeting they added the fact that I was an expert in this system to my job description. Not bad for a 21-year-old who was too dumb to process that clicking yes on a box marked "Do you want to remove all access rights for 100+ users?" was a terrible idea. Edit, thank you for my awards, kind strangers. I have had a lot of comments suggesting Andy was very well aware that I was the reason for the system implosion. So as a thank you for all the awards, I have messaged him on LinkedIn to ask if he remembers, and if that was indeed the case. We'll update if I hear back. There may be a possibility that Andy knew the real story, and was trying to protect you, and gain some credibility for his initiative. My current boss is like that. He'll go to the mat for his employees, but always manages to spin it so that he and his team come out on top. Good politician. I do wonder that actually, although he never let on if so. He was various v the idiots upstairs in his general attitude, so it could be the case. What a great story. You'll learn as you move on with your career that there is so much going on with managers that sometimes, although rare, they can be managing so many other influences that like a system, or don't see the benefit of change, that they are eventually happy for something to go wrong because it gives them a chance to put something to sleep and write it off as broken. Very first tech job as a youngin', and I forgot to verify if someone had backed up files before a clean OS install. Lost the guy's Outlook archive files with 10 years worth of conveniently stored and important email. Apologized and sheepishly turned the issue over to admins. Pushing the problem off to someone else. I am a habitual user of this tactic myself. God, what an idiot. Not you, them. A simple hard drive failure would have had the same result. If it's important, you back it up, or you lose it. In the mid-2000s, people would cling onto their Outlook archives like they were their firstborn. Even when we installed mail servers that could swallow everyone's data, they wouldn't let go. I worked in a nice steakhouse. First week, I accidentally put salt in the sugar bowls and sugar in the salt shakers. Customers started to complain about their sweet steaks and salty coffees. We had to pull all the salt and sugar from each table. My last day as a waiter. I can really relate to this. While in high school, I had a job at night working at an indecent restaurant, and accidentally mixed up ranch with blue cheese from the big jugs the dressings came in. I just added it to the salad bar with a tag out that said blue ranch so as not to waste it, and the customers actually used it all up within a few days. I felt bad for screwing up, but there were no repercussions for my mistake. Out there are some people who discovered a new dressing they really liked called Blue Ranch, but have been unsuccessful in finding this dressing anywhere else. My first day as a dishwasher at a resort, I dropped a tray stacked with executive china. I dropped an empty glass of lemonade while working in a cafe. I feel very connected to your comment. Your comment has really got me thinking about the philosophical implications of an empty glass of lemonade. Language is weird. Ah, it was a glass bottle of a name brand lemonade. No longer full of lemonade, but even when you take the lemonade out of the bottle, you can't take the bottle out of the lemonade. Not me, but I worked at a place that made wiring harnesses. Dudes, for this day he's running the wire cutting machine. Suddenly says he's sick and leaves. Never came back. He absolutely messed up everything on the cut. What's sad is he wouldn't have been fired. Or even been in trouble. He didn't have to leave. I have seen about 5 new employees over last 6 months, just leaving the office and never coming back. I have been near them. I have been instructed to answer their questions about work. They were aware of it. They never actually asked anything. And way more employees remained and worked well, so I really don't know what was so terrifying for those who left without speaking a word. If only they said anything, I would help with all my knowledge, but they just pretended going to lunch or answering the phone, and noon ever saw them again. Sometimes people do this because they just know it's not for them. Nothing you could have done. I started a job recently and realized before lunch on my first day that this wasn't a good fit. Nice enough place, but it was like going back in time. I realized that they wanted me to help modernize it, but that wasn't what I would been hired for. Still, I stuck with for a couple of weeks. Then they started talking about signing me up for a bunch of licenses and training. I took my boss aside and said that it wasn't a good fit, and they shouldn't waste their money. Here's my 2 weeks. I wanted to do the right thing, but there's nothing they could have done to keep me. It's not you, don't worry. I work as an apprentice in an IT and printer repair office. We had a tech apprentice last year who finished his education and sent out an email to everyone, around 20 people including management, saying that it was his last day and thank you to everyone. We got along pretty well, we're around the same age, and we both hated our jobs and how we were treated, so I replied with that "God, I wish that were me" DeviantArt comment meme. Realized an hour later I hit reply to all instead of reply and sent it out to the entire office. Almost shit my pants. Luckily no one brought it up except 1 to 2 coworkers I am on good terms with who found it funny, but God, I wanted to die. Probably everyone could relate, LOL. Getting some second-hand embarrassment here. Was promoted to terminal manager, and I was a dumb 25-year-old idealist. We had an essential employee, a mechanic, who kept our fleet of trucks running. At least that was his job description. Less than a month on the job, it came to my attention that he was a working alcoholic and his work on our fleet was underwhelming. My boss told me to fire him once we had a new mechanic ready to come in. I told the old mechanic that he should probably start looking for new work if he couldn't do the job. Word got back to him through the pipeline that he was going to be fired. I went to a bar with my assistant manager after working 40 days straight, and lo and behold, the mechanic showed up. Long story short, the mechanic attempted to abduct me with his adult son and dump my body in a frozen lake. The whole thing became a large dramatic bullshit event that put me in the hospital for a few hours, and we both lost our jobs. Why did you lose your job? They didn't want to deal with it. It's an at-will employment state. Why did you lose your job? That'd kind of fucked up. A customer got the best of me. I worked upper-level customer service for an Australian winery conglomerate that shall remain unnamed. They owned a bunch of exclusive brands, but only had a team of 6 or 7 customer service reps to service them all. 2 of us got paid $1 or HR more to be upper-level customer service and take escalations, which is fancy talk for get shit on by the wealthy. A customer from their top brand made an online purchase, which we shipped immediately. He decided he was upset about that, as we should have read his mind and known he wanted it 3 months later. Anyway, he called me a retard, so I cancelled his order, his wine club membership, and deleted his customer profile. I was not let go due to them literally needing me to keep the department running, but my manager burst a blood vessel in his eye. As a person working in retail, I respect that. Thank you for your service. My bosses at all of my customer service jobs made it extremely clear I was allowed to hang up on abusive callers as long as I immediately reported it to a supervisor. We didn't have any call recording in place, so it was my word against the customers, but our bosses believed in us. Not me, but my dad. He used to be a microbiologist and was working in a hospital with a tray of test tubes containing some kind of pseudorabies. He went arse over tit and spilt rabies everywhere. He's an accountant now. So if a microbiologist catches rabies, he has to become an accountant. No use crying over spilt rabies. I want to hear more. I actually laughed. Did anyone get rabies? No, but the director was foaming at the mouth. Not me, but someone in my previous organization. We'll call him Bob. Bob works very high up in the North American Primary Metals Division for Alcoa International. Bob decided that one of 2 aluminum smelters in the US was paying too much for its contracted power rate. If you don't know, it takes a lot of power to refine raw aluminum from bauxite ore. My facility occupied less than 1 square mile of land, but used enough electricity to power 1 or 3 the total households in Seattle. Bob decided to terminate the contract in late winter last year. The majority of my facility's power was provided via hydroelectric dam. In winter, water freezes, thus flowing through the dams much slower, and yet power demand increases as people try to keep their own homes warm. The weekend after Bob killed the power contract, a cold snap hit our area for about 3 days. What should have been a couple $100,000 of power for that weekend ended up costing us more than $20 million, as all excess power needs were paid at a premium. About a year later, our facility is upside down in a few other areas because of mismanagement, but it all started with Bob cutting our lifeline. Here I sit today unemployed, as the facility was deemed unprofitable, and a majority of our workforce was forcibly laid off 2 months ago. 700 direct jobs, thousands of other areas impacted from the loss of this facility, and literally millions of dollars taken out of our local economy because Bob went against 60 years of common fucking sense. I hate Bob. I would like to meet him one day. Oh, I have fucked up so many times. Hey, race my 2 favorites. Worked at an egg farm and was carrying 12 flats of eggs. Didn't see the pallet someone left in the walkway. Tripped on the pallet and hundreds of eggs go flying and splattered all over the floor. Meanwhile, I fell and dislocated my wrist and shoulder. I was washing a dairy cow named Laverne before showing her at a county fair. She didn't like having her tail washed. She kicked the bucket of soapy water over onto my rubber boots and took off running. I grabbed both sides of her halter, but my boots were slick, and she basically ran around the washing area in circles with me hanging onto her head while my tractionless boots acted like water skis. Of course, this happened in front of crowds of people who started laughing. Finally, I lost my grip and sat down in a puddle while Laverne ran toward a little boy holding a scone. He dropped the scone and ran, and Laverne ate his scone. I got night barn duty for that. I work at a jail. We have things called keep-aparts to keep people away from each other since they may have conflicts on the street or otherwise. I accidentally let these 2 guys go into the same room together. Guy 1 is fucking massive. Guy 2 is small and allegedly killed Guy 1's friend. Guy 2 doesn't know Guy 1, but Guy 1 knows who he is and what he allegedly did. So they go into this room with about 30 other people, and after about 20 minutes Guy 1 casually walks over to Guy 2 and beats the ever-loving shit out of him. Easily could have killed him. Luckily we stopped it before it got worse. But I still fucked up massively. Not related, but Guy 1 was recently killed by his friend when they were drunk and his friend accidentally shot him in the head. Now guy one's friend is in jail for murder. Well, that was a wild ride. I'll just stay out jail if I can. I'll just stay out jail if I can. Life pro tips. You were considering before. This reminds me of a friend of mine who was shot in the head by his drunk friend who accidentally left a bullet in the chamber. He's rotting in prison. Accepted 20 fake $100 bills because I hadn't been taught how to spot fakes. I mean, that's kind of the store's fault for not properly training you to be honest. Oh yeah, management was pretty chill about the whole thing. I was terrified when they called me into the office. It was my first job, but I calmed down when they explained that they weren't angry with me and acknowledged that they hadn't trained me properly. After that incident, I made sure to teach the new hires every possible way to spot a fake. Got a friend of mine fired. Store really didn't care that he hadn't been trained. Concessions at a movie theater. I was making popcorn, but I had learned that if we used a bit more seasoning and oil, the popcorn tasted insanely better. What I didn't know was the popcorn machine had broken earlier and wasn't stirring the popcorn anymore. So after I had made a new batch and no popcorn coming out, I decided to check on the machine, and a hot glob of oil flew into my eye. Started cussing and screaming in front of a whole bunch of customers, and got rushed into the back to wash my eye out. I used to work concession too. Thankfully I never had any in the eye, but definitely got little searing bits on my face, and hot kernels jumping down my shirt. One time had some oil splash right on my hand as I was filling up a kid's box. That was no fun. Great job though. Reported out a patient as being negative for BUP on a drug screen when they were positive. It was for a chronic pain drug management checkup. So essentially I made it seem like the patient wasn't taking their pain pills and hadn't been. Might have broken down crying after the patient reamed me out. I really hope you made it right with the patient by correcting the results and notifying whoever it was sent to. Mixed bleach and ammonia. Had to evacuate the restaurant. Edit. My first award. Thank you, kind stranger. I never knew my first job fuck-up would pay off like this. To clarify, we had a soaking agent for the silverware that didn't know was ammonia-based, and I mixed it with bleach and water because I figured if I was bleaching the kitchen drains, I might as well use something that'll foam up and take the mildew with it. The food here will knock you out of this world. Fell asleep at the Chernobyl plant. I asked for no mustard in my burger, and I shit you not they made fucking mustard gas just to spite me. 0 or 10. No tip. Yes, I recognize the chemical gas isn't technically mustard gas. Just making a joke. Edit. Spite not spire. In Sweden, when you're in the 8th grade, you get to practice work for a week, like a short internship. I managed to get a dream position for me. I got to take care of the horses of a famous Swedish show jump rider, who had his horses in a large stable complex along with other super expensive horses. Anyway, when cleaning the stable aisle, you opened the door to the stalls and swept the hay or dust into the stalls. One day when I was sweeping, I opened the door to a stall, swept stuff into it, and then moved on to the next, opening that, and then I heard the sound of hooves entering the aisle. I turned around, realized that I forgot to close the previous door, and the horse was about to make his grand escape. I panicked and started running after the escapee, only to hear a second set of hooves entering the aisle, as I of course had forgotten to close the other door before running after the rouge horse. Also edited heifers to mares. Also edited heifers to mares. If it makes you feel any better, my mom's fuck-up at that age is even worse. She used to attend a high school that required you worked on a farm all summer, so one summer she worked and lived at a working farm, and brought her horse a stallion with her. One day she decided her horse needed to be washed, and since they didn't have Ty UPS in the barn, she thought tie her large fairly wild stallion to the old rickety porch would be the best idea. He spooked, pulling down the porch and breaking down the paddock fence for the sheep in his escape, leaving her standing there trying to catch a dozen sheep, a stallion, and explain the huge mess. More of an almost fuck-up than an actual fuck-up, but early temp job in my career afforded a little bit too much freedom on how to accomplish tasks. Was doing data processing as a side task from my usual work, realized how absolutely abhorrently awful the software was. Needed to get a large amount of data out of this program from a database of people. Now, this program was the only means we had of accessing the database, and allowed both reading and writing data with no distinct modes, and there was essentially no access control. I could do anything. Now, I needed a way to copy a field of data from forms in this program for literally thousands of entries on people, with no way to mass export data, and my brilliant idea was to write an AutoHot script that would automate the long and arduous task of scrolling one item down the list, clicking an entry, clicking the open button, clicking the tab where the data I needed was, double-clicking the field to select the data, entering Ctrl+C, tabbing over to where I needed that data, and hitting Ctrl+V, over and over and over. Well, it went swimmingly for the first several hundred. Then I bumped the mouse. The cursor being offset from its expected position when it sent a click meant it clicked the wrong button, which opened a different page. Suddenly, none of the commands and clicks and button presses were being sent where they were expected to be sent, and this program was blind, so it was just merely chugging away, typing commands with reckless abandon, and I had no way to stop it until it had looped as many times I had set, which was a few thousand. Tried to use Task Manager. The keys it was entering interfered with the key combination. Tried to hit the Windows key and quickly shut it down, but the script just kept moving the mouse back where it belonged and kept on going. My supervisor was close enough to see over my shoulder, so it would have raised suspicions if my screen suddenly went black due to pulling the plug on this thing. So I silently panicked as I watched thousands of records being overwritten as the script went haywire, typing commands into name fields, copying from one data field and pasting into another, clicking buttons when it was supposed to be clicking on the down arrow on a scroll bar, and just generally tearing this database that we had no backup of to shreds. Now, this was an absolutely crucial database. I thought I was going to die. Finally, after much wrangling, I managed to move the mouse fast enough to hit the tray icon, and pause the script before its next mouse move. And I was faced with a pop-up that gave me the greatest relief I would ever felt in my life. Miraculously, this clusterfuck of a front end on a horribly mismanaged database at least had a confirm button, and by clicking outside of the confirmation window in its merry chaos, the script had failed to commit the hundreds of entries it had corrupted. Disaster averted, nothing had saved. I then proceeded to just add a handful of safeguards and kill switches to prevent such an occurrence from happening again, and just ran the thing over again, and this time it worked perfectly, and I got us pats for getting through that volume of data faster than they thought possible, with no one the wiser. I worked at a retail store when two women walked by me and said tell coworker that she gave us excellent service on their way out of the store. I told my coworker about it afterward and she said who were they? And for some reason my dumbass said I am not sure, but they were two heavy-set women, then described what they were wearing. And my coworker said oh, that was my mom and my aunt. I have never been more embarrassed in my life. If that is how you actually describe them, you're being way too hard on yourself. I have an obese parent and I am well aware of it. It would be an accurate description, and wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest. Now if you had said those two fat bastards or something rude, it would be a different story. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Two fatty boombalities, if I recall correctly. I had an important meeting that could eventually lead me into a huge promotion. I kid you not, I zipped my zipper onto my dick after taking a piss in the bathroom, and it fucking hurt like hell. Not as bad as that Ben Stiller movie, but trust me, it was not a good situation. I actually went to a local pharmacy to grab some Advil to hopefully ease some of the pain, just to get through the meeting. Edit. Just to clarify, this happened in the bathroom at my office about an hour before the meeting. I see this a surprising amount on Reddit. Does no one wear underwear? So for the so very luckily uninitiated, a zipper hitting the penis happens not due to lack of underwear, but lack of dick awareness. It will happen once, twice, maybe a third time, but once you learn the lesson, you never make it again. See, if the head of your penis is pressed up against the area of your boxers where the zipper would go up, and it presses enough into the fabric to stretch it slightly into the path of the zipper, there's potential to zip the tip. This can happen with foreskin, too, which I can only imagine to be even worse. But it isn't a result of going commando, it's a result of dick neglect, and shaving off a few layers of skin is the consequence. Dick neglect and the foreskin 5 zip the tip. How'd you get the beans above the frank? Worked at a terrible fast food job, got cussed out one too many times in the same day by customers and a coworker actually, and ended up saying fuck you to a customer after he said it to me. Got fired the next day. Back when I worked in the service industry, I worked at a place famous for its tea. They have 5-gallon tanks of their tea that we make 8 at a time. Well, it was my last day, and I was picking one up freshly brewed right after I added the sugar and completely dropped it all over myself. It was hot and sticky. I got a new shirt on my last day. I almost died of hypothermia. I was a bartender and we kept a lot of drinks the guests wanted ice cold in a walk-in freezer. So I went inside the first freezer, drinks aren't there. Then from that first freezer you walk in the second one. I forgot to put a stopper so the door won't close. I was freaking out, getting colder by the minute. I screamed but no one could hear me. A co-worker came in to check on me, he thankfully knew where I was. The fact that there isn't a latch outside the walk-in is a major safety issue, and I am sure OSHA would like to know. I got locked inside a freezer due to a faulty release, and I had no qualms about giving it the old Sparta kick. Ordered up some repair parts and told the manager his shit was broken. I used to work prep at a fairly large chain restaurant. One day, nearing lunch, I decided it would be funny to play a prank on the line cook, who was by himself for the next 30 minutes. I set all 5 of our microwaves to go off at the same time. Only problem is they were empty, and I set them all for a minute each. They all caught fire. It was first of the month Saturday. How the fuck does that happen? Why would a microwave spontaneously combust for running for a minute whilst empty? Well, I have always wondered what happened when you ran a microwave while it was empty. I appreciate your sacrifice. Wow. You are still with us. Thanks for being such a nice person. As long as you are here, why not like this video and subscribe to our channel? Also, you can press the bell icon, so you won't miss any future uploads.